Morning.
Morning. Sorry, I had just muted myself because I knew I was about to move around and cause a bunch of noise. Yeah, so I'm going to mute. So I got to get my stuff set up because I have class at 8 a.m. So.
Oh, you're good. Good morning, Marvin.
Morning, Todd. Morning, Jonathan.
You at work already?
Nah. Just sitting at home.
Morning, Mr. Holman. Sorry, I had myself on mute. I'm getting myself ready for class here, and I've got a lot of papers I'm shuffling around and getting an iPad and everything in position and all that because I have class at 8. So
Now, hopefully we're done well in advance of that.
I hope so too. I connected to the YouTube link on my phone so I can continue afterwards. It's kind of weird because it's on a delay. So I just saw myself drink my cup of coffee as I was like looking up going, well, I didn't do that.
Good morning.
Morning, sir.
Morning. Hey, Daryl, you're sideways. There you go.
Morning, everybody.
Morning, Lou.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Okay, by my clock, it's 7 a.m. I believe we have everyone here. Go ahead and call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Brown,
Here.
Mr. Brooks,
Here.
Mr. Cooper,
Here.
Mr. Holman,
Here.
Mr. Stahl.
Here. Thank you. Please join Mr. Stahl in a period of meditation and the pledge of the flag. Please join me in a moment of meditation. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
United States.
Republic for which it stands,
Under God, individual,
indivisible,
liberty,
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 4, public participation. All right, Mr. Boyd, under the LEA contract agreement, you have the opportunity to provide comments on behalf of the LEA.
Yes, thank you. Thank you to the administration and to the members of the Board of Education for taking the time to have this meeting and for listening to the input from the members of the association. 64 staff members responded to my request for thoughts on hybrid versus virtual for the remainder of this semester. I copied the bodies of those emails into a Google document so I could review them, and it was over 21 pages. I must be honest, several of these stories, thoughts, opinions, and things that they shared made me cry. People are doing their best to safely educate our children during a very real global pandemic while trying to protect themselves and protect their families. Since March, we have faced so many difficulties. We've had to change so many things. We've spent much of our time away from our students. And we spent much of our time away from our own families. I hope that you understand that every single member of this staff wants to be back to the normal way. Our hope is that you understand that to us, they're not just students. They are our kids, and their safety is more important than anything. At this time, being physically present in these buildings is not a safe learning environment. COVID quarantine, COVID isolations, infections are a danger to our students and staff's well-being. 61 of the 64 staff members who sent an email to me want London City Schools to remain virtual the remainder of this first semester. We have additional thoughts to share regarding the start of the second semester, but as I understand it, this meeting will not fully make that decision. So I will share those thoughts when that time is appropriate. Again, I thank you for this meeting, and the teachers greatly thank you for listening to our concerns. Members of the board, Dr. Kramer, Ms. Blend, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. All right. Ms. Blend, I understand we had some comments provided to you from the general public.
Yes, we did. I received public comments from 11 individuals, so I will read those aloud to the board.
Thank you.
I'll read these in the order that they were received. The first comment I received is from Nancy Brooks. Her comments are as follows. I'm a very concerned parent of 2 elementary students. While I believe schools should be open, I do not think that this is the time. I have a very high-risk 5th grader. We started the school year with Rader Remote. After about a week and a half, we learned that PLP material for my 3rd grader was what we felt like not at a 3rd grade level. We also felt that it was not repetitive enough for my 5th grader. We made the difficult decision to send them back to school. It has been downhill ever since. He has been sick, in and out of the hospital, and many tests done just since October. He has severe asthma and has a hard time with any respiratory illness. He has missed 12 days of school with illness. He's currently sick again. His teacher who taught last Monday and Tuesday tested positive over the holiday weekend. While I'll be taking him to the doctor where she will order a test again, the doctor and I are fairly confident that will be positive this time. If it is positive, he caught the virus at school. We've not left our home since Tuesday, November 24th. No one in or out of our house. We spent Thanksgiving alone and are planning to spend Christmas alone too. Other families in the LCS school district did not. Some families sent their children to other states for e-learning. Many families went to multiple Thanksgiving dinners and hosted Friendsgivings. There are many LCS families who still do not wear masks out in public. Chris Cook shut down the school at first, and Christmas will be the worst. People are out shopping. There will be large family gatherings. It's inevitable when people don't believe how bad the virus is and don't believe the masks work. I think keeping schools closed until after Christmas is the responsible thing to do. Parents will bully you to open, but you shouldn't cave to them. We are talking about 3 weeks, not the rest of the year. 3 weeks of at-home learning is not going to ruin a 13-year education. If it was 3 weeks with no at-home learning, sure. My child has done almost 3 weeks of no online learning and just worksheets when he has been out, but he isn't behind. He still has A's and B's. You should do the right and smart thing. Just because a kid hasn't been tested doesn't mean they aren't carrying that virus home to other high-risk and elderly family members. Don't risk your students' lives, their families' lives, and your teachers' lives because it is an inconvenience for some adults. Keep schools closed until January. The next comments I received are from Julie Hampton. This is just to show my support for the continuation of remote learning for all schools. The county has seen an increase in COVID-19, and it is not a safe environment to send our children back into. At least follow through with the original plan to stay remote until January. Now, Tyler Zabladil. I, Tyler Zabladil, would just like to say thanks to the Board of Education for all the work they have done for this school year. The plans that were put in place before the school year started have worked well, and all parents that opted to send their kids back to school full-time were aware of the possible risk of their children coming into contact with COVID-19. They still chose to send their children to school because that is what their children truly need to be successful in the classroom. So please let the option remain with the parents, not a board of health, on whether children can learn in a classroom setting. And now comments from Amy Walker. I'm writing today to encourage you to take the current health advisory just as seriously as you did the health order that shut down our schools. As the superintendent said in his email to families, something changed in the weeks leading up to Thanksgiving. Our positive cases were up, the number of students in quarantine were huge, and parents who are doing our best to keep our children healthy were concerned. With all the travel that has taken place with Thanksgiving break and all of the travel yet to come with Christmas holiday, I encourage you to keep our children on remote learning as advised by our county health commissioner. If you read the open letter to Madison County residents that Chris Cook wrote that was published by the Madison Messenger, our county would have been at purple if it had not been evaluated a day early due to Thanksgiving. What was the point of having the alternative return to school plans to switch to, if not to use them when we are at our highest spread? This is not the flu. This is a potentially fatal virus, a national pandemic. I would also like you to consider the situation that I am personally in. The only reason we chose in-person learning for my high school child is because he takes honors courses. Those honor courses are not being offered through Radar Remote. We were forced to go in-person school in order for him to get the classes he so desperately wanted and deserves. I made the decision very carefully at the beginning of the school year, knowing that you had alternative plans in place if the situation in our county changed. They have changed. I'm not alone in my situation. Parents of special needs children made similar decisions, knowing that their children would do best under the care of a teacher who specializes in their child's needs. Those children also deserve to be able to get that at home if their parents choose to comply with the advisory. If you intend to bring these children back into the classroom against the advice of the health commissioner, I ask that you give us an option to adhere to the advice ourselves. As an example, you could set up a virtual option for children whose parents want them to remain at home during the advisory. Set the computer up in the back of the classroom, turn on the cameras, and let my child attend class from home. I have a younger child and myself at home, and we are both at high risk with asthma and compromised immune systems. I'm literally tearing myself in half to accommodate all of their needs. Sending one child to school to be exposed because he deserves an honors education, and keeping one child and myself living at home in our best attempt to protect ourselves. I'm pleading with you, please keep the kids home or give an option to parents to keep our children home and comply with the health advisory. We are all in this together, and I want you to help me protect my family. I've emailed the superintendent twice prior to this email addressing all of you in an attempt to get an alternative option for my child so he can still get his honors education. With the high case numbers and high spread in our county and schools, we can't jump right back into the classroom. Now comments from Sandy Smith. I want to add my input for the upcoming meeting regarding the plans for school opening versus remote options. I'm the parent of a high-risk preschooler, severe asthmatic, and an infant, along with a special needs child in the elementary school, and have been very grateful for our weeks of in-person schooling to date. Every day I followed the updates on the county health website to remain confident that I could trust the best decisions were being made for situations like mine, along with hundreds of other local families. Based on the current advisories and information, I definitely do not feel that an in-person option is appropriate for our children or our community, which has been underscored by our health department's recommendations and advisories. I would hope that your decision would reflect that. Despite what some people believe about in-person school being a personal choice, most health professionals realize these decisions can only be made with our entire community in mind. I need in-home services or individual intervention specialist help for my son, and I do not feel that we should have to create a dangerous situation for our vulnerable populations by catering to the desire for convenience in a time like this. I trust that our school and surrounding services can work to accommodate special circumstances like my own, while still upholding the advisory of the health department. I hope my thoughts will be considered with the understanding that there are plenty of others like me who feel that safety and consideration should trump personal convenience in situations like these. Thank you for your time. Next, comments from Jill Hiles. London School Board, I feel you as a board are being pushed by people who have a political agenda and not necessarily interest of all students and all staff in their best interest. These individuals are using the school districts as a pawn in their game. I feel they are already pushing for board members to decide what you should do as a board. I don't think we should send kids back full-time in any building. I'm good with my kids remote and prefer it actually. We just came off a holiday where many did not just stay home. Many traveled or had others travel to their home. Some had others stay in their home. Since most would not show symptoms until Sunday or the middle of next week, there lies the concern for just having 10 days in-person instruction before Christmas break. My family did not mix with others. We stayed home. I know many did not. I would settle for hybrid, but I wouldn't like it as a parent or a teacher. As a teacher, I think it is pointless for essentially 4 days of in-person instruction if they go back on Monday and break starts on December 18th. As a parent, I question why we are considering changing instead of keeping to a plan that was already made. What I feel we are showing our children is if they act like a toddler and have a temper tantrum and yell and post nonsense in social media because you don't like something, you can get your way. As a member of the community, I know you can't keep them 6 feet apart, and everyone is doing their best to keep everything clean. But I don't see the harm in giving our community these 3 weeks to control what is happening. These comments are from Melanie McSeveny. I write to encourage the board to reopen the schools. Our children have been suffering for over 9 months of constant change of direction and uncertainty. Kids do better with consistency. The mental health, lack of consistent and engaged learning, not to mention the number of children in our district that depend on the safety of school for their physical and mental well-being, need to be our top priority. The data thus far does not support the measures that have been taken. With over a 99% recovery rate of those that do contract COVID, and in light of the fact that children are not big drivers in the spread, it's time they go back. The health department fraudulently closed schools down November 24th, and that is, in my opinion, why they changed it to an advisory at yesterday's meeting. As of today, they issued information that Madison County is close to moving to purple. My fear is this is a further ploy to keep schools closed, and much like the governor has done, they put this on you, the board, to make the unpopular decision to stay closed. Please don't do this. Knowing firsthand how this is affecting not only my kids' mental well-being, but many others, the time is now to get these kids back in class. I've watched some of the online and hybrid learning, and this is not the best education for our children. Parents who are fearful of the virus had the option of fully remote. The rest of us want our kids there. I truly feel and appreciate that you are under tremendous pressure to do the best thing. Please consider severing ties with the MCPH and move back to hiring nurses through the district. Decisions should be made by the board that the tax-paying citizens of Madison County have elected to do what is in the best interest of the students of London City Schools. Thank you for your time. Pardon me. All right, comments from Stephanie Schooley. To the Board of Education, my name is Stephanie Schooley, and I have the privilege of being a parent and a teacher in the district. I'm the parent of 2 boys, one who is a 2019 graduate of London High School, and the other is currently a junior at the high school. I'm an intervention specialist in the 4th grade. I'm asking that you consider going hybrid for the remainder of this 2020 school, and when we return in 2021. Parents that were concerned made their choice to keep their kids home and do radio remote, and I respect that. These are parents that decided to send their kids, and I believe we need to honor their request. Many people have said it is the last 2 weeks before Christmas, or my kid is an honor student, so it does not impact me. I disagree with that. Kids need to see their teachers. They need structure and clear expectations. They also need to see people that care about them and love them. For many of our students, we may be the only smile or support they get in a day. Studies have shown that even when kids become sick, they recover quickly. Studies have shown that not having kids in school is much worse for their education and their emotional stability. I realize this is a serious and scary time. My oldest son tested positive at college, and luckily he was fine and recovered within a week. This is something we are going to have to deal with because it is not going away, and we need to adjust and lead our students through this scary time. Thank you. Right, these comments are from Melissa, I believe it's Glazier. Elected board members, our kids at LCS deserve a classroom for their mental well-being, for their educational needs, for the socialization, for music, art, and physical education, for healthy meals, for separation from siblings, parents, etc., for the single working parents who can't be home, for the elderly grandparents who can't operate technology. My students, grades 1, 2, and 10, were thriving, going 5 days a week. We have all been in tears every day since the change to remote. My first graders' Zoom meetings are mostly grandparents who don't know how to mute themselves, so the students can't hear the teacher and giggle most of the time. The second grader only has about half of the kids in the Zoom meeting every day. It's not my responsibility to teach my kids when I pay school tax to employ teachers to do so. The kids are too distracted to learn at home. Everyone is frustrated. My kids never once complained about wearing a mask or social distancing. They were just happy to be at school. Please vote to reopen our schools for our kids' sake. They are counting on you. Those who aren't comfortable returning can opt for the remote option. Our community has always been so supportive of our schools and extracurricular activities. Please don't let us down now. These comments are from the Mitchells. Dear school board, first, I want to thank you for serving the community. This year has not been easy for any of us. Many decisions have needed to be made this year that are life altering. I'm strongly asking that you vote to get the kids back to school 5 days a week and continue the extracurricular activities. Studies have shown for months that these are necessary for healthy kids. It's very frustrating when we see other schools just a few miles down the road that are going to school and playing regular seasons of sports. I believe if we take time off when athletes return in January, our athletes could be more open to injury or at a disadvantage because other schools will be well into their season in addition to the mental health effects. I'm asking that you please do the right thing for our kids. Give them back their schooling and their sports. The data shows, if you look closely at it like I have, a mere 123 kids have died of COVID in the whole country. The overreach of government needs to end. Please listen to the people that you are working for. Thank you. The last comments I have are from Renee Zabladil. This is lengthy, so bear with me. I reach out to you again to advocate for the return of the children to the school buildings. I also advocate for the return of sports and other activities to their full functions as they were prior to November 30th. I won't spend time to copy and paste the 2 emails that I previously sent to all of you, but I stand by all the information that I have previously presented. Just Sunday, Dr. Fauci stated the following: if you look at the data, the spread among children and from children is not really big at all, not like one would have expected. Also, if you review the most recent CDC data, there have been 104 COVID-19 deaths in children aged 5 to 18 years across the entire United States from February 1st, 2020 to November 28th, 2020. Although I was without sufficient time to find the study, I am aware that the survival rate among teachers is above 99%. Nothing has happened within the schools to step away from any idea that the accommodations made because of COVID-19 are not working within the schools. Nothing has happened within sports to step away from any idea that the accommodations made because of COVID-19 are not working within sports and other activities. Remember that the district gave families options before school began. Those of us who did not opt out of in-person learning were willing to accept all risks for our children by sending him, her, them to the school building each day. The board should consider the demographics of the children that are served by the district. I don't like to toot my own horn at all, but I think you should know that I speak out with all sorts of knowledge and experience, including being an attorney practicing within the City of London and a guardian ad litem appointed to protect and act in the best interests of children. I have a great concern for our children now and what is being set up for our children's learning that will affect their lives in 10, 20 years and throughout every facet of their life. I'm quite certain that all the ramifications cannot even be contemplated as we sit here today. In considering human development, now is the time that children's minds are being shaped, and now is the best time to learn. And reducing their ability to learn by taking away the daily in-person instruction and interactions will have a great impact on the children that most of us will not live to see. You always want the next generation to succeed beyond the one before. Closing the school buildings is not giving the children the foundation they need for that success. I have concerns for the day-to-day interactions that the children are missing with virtual learning. There are many children whose only point of normalcy, structure, and calmness is the school. It is where they go to feel safe and comfortable. By taking that away, they have lost those hours of serenity where they forget about the domestic violence, neglect, divorces, separations, abuse, hunger, among other things that they may face outside of school. Virtual learning and closure of sports and other activities creates a lot of idle time and creates a potentially large space and time for lack of enrichment that children could get if they were in a classroom and participating in sports and other activities. I also ask you to consider the physical and mental health of children. Activity is great for children's physical health. It is really just the simple walk from class to class for a high school student, but as exciting as recess to an elementary student. Right now, it is certainly the emotional and mental pieces of a child too. Just today, I read a news article about a 6th grader in California who committed suicide during his school Zoom meeting. I want to share with you a piece of that article authored by Samantha Solomon in Van 2 of ABC 10, who referred to a September 2020 interview with Dr. Mark Edelstein, a child and adolescent psychiatrist. It reads, and while the academic side is a huge point of stress, Dr. Edelstein said that is just the starting. I'm sorry, some of that's cut off. Dr. Edelstein said, but you learn about your role as a student and as a citizen and as a friend. You may have a mentor at school. You certainly get a lot of support if you've got good friends there. Finally, for 10 years, I've been involved with the 4th, 5th, and 6th grade basketball teams that proudly wear a London uniform. The closure of the school buildings has shut out these 32 girls from after-school exercise, hard work, and dedication to one day represent the school in a varsity sport. More importantly, because of the loss of the in-person interactions, they're losing out on building bonds and a sense of family with their teammates, because being part of a team is a whole lot more important than any win or loss. I urge you to open the school buildings to permit these activities to recommence. I urge you to allow the children to return to the school buildings for in-person learning and to return to their sports and activities that they love so much. Thank you for taking the time to read and consider this information. Okay, that concludes the public comments.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 5 on the agenda, board business. Mr. Cooper, you and Mr. Stahl asked for this meeting for this purpose to discuss the health advisory. Previously, under board action, we made a decision to allow Dr. Kramer as the school superintendent to make the decision on moving the school into or out of virtual or classroom. I'll turn the floor over to you, Mr. Cooper, at this time.
Right, I called for the meeting to inform the public on what the decisions were coming up after and to discuss the scenarios that Dr. Kramer has provided us and what we can do to move forward. And basically, without going back and forth and trying to reach each other on the phone singly, I felt a meeting was probably more appropriate, being that somebody, usually is so busy that, they can't get back to you. I figured we would just do it here.
Okay, Dr. Kramer, you've provided us all with your recommendation on how to proceed. Would you please cover that for us?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Brown. I think it's important for us to just take a kind of a quick trip to how we've gotten here 5 months into a new school year during a pandemic. As you recall, during the fourth quarter of the last school year was rather traumatic for everyone as we all quarantined within our homes, and we shifted very quickly over a weekend into all virtual learning. During the summer, when it was apparent that we would be able to reopen, we used our district safety committee to help look at our restart plan. That restart plan was eventually approved in the beginning of August. And we really looked regarding that plan on a couple of things. Of course, we looked at the rate of infections with student, staff, and within the community, but we also looked at our operational ability to hold school, and that is teacher availability, staff availability was a particular component of that aspect. The decision to open school this year was delayed a little bit so that we can prepare and look at all the protective actions that we were being asked to make within our schools. We chose to open all in with our elementary students, and because we didn't know exactly how the protective actions would work, and certainly this was all of our first pandemic and opening our school year, we chose to have hybrid for our middle school and our high school students. We sent out regular updates during the first quarter when we stayed within those learning modes. And our data had remained to look very good. Our rate of infection was very low. I believe our first infection that we encountered was the second week of September. So we were receiving very encouraging results that our protective actions were working and that we were being successful. We predicated having elementary students on campus because of what we learned during fourth quarter, that certainly while we can be flexible and older students are a little bit more flexible when it comes to hybrid or virtual learning, our elementary students certainly need to be on campus. And then we also looked at the options for our families as well, childcare playing a determinant factor in that aspect. It's been mentioned a couple of times in public participation that parents were given options. We absolutely were. We launched some Rader remote options, and about 25% of our parents chose to educate their children in a fully remote option using an alternative curriculum during the semester. As a school district, we left a 2-week window open at the beginning of the quarter for families to make that difficult decision of whether or not their child would stay all remote or whether they would send them to school in person, knowing that the amount of time on campus could be influenced greatly by the factors that we included in our restart plan, teacher availability, rate of infection, and so on. So we progressed pretty well through the first quarter. And at the beginning of October, based on all aspects, we were doing particularly well, and we announced that we were bringing all students back beginning October 19th, which was the start of the second quarter. We saw a window here. We knew cold and flu season was coming up. We also know that COVID symptoms, cold and flu symptoms are very similar, and we felt like this was a good opportunity to bring students back. And again, rate of infections and the amount that disruption that was occurring with our operation was very low. So that occurred on October 19th. Again, continuing to provide updates to the community and to the board. On November 4th, I remember in particular, I sent an update out to families. At that time, we had only experienced 10 positive cases of COVID between staff and students, and that our intention was to remain in-person learning for all students. The following week, Madison County Public Health had advised all school districts that an order was imminent within 2 weeks that would move us to hybrid education. Almost in tune, we did receive a sharp increase in the number of positive cases that we were experiencing. We all know that order from hybrid changed to virtual before we even implemented hybrid, right before Thanksgiving. And we shifted very quickly to the order for us to be all virtual beginning this past Monday. Since November 4th, the district has recorded 33 additional cases of COVID-19. So far this school year, that's a total of 43 cases. That encompasses 16 staff cases and 27 student cases to date. Obviously, we were working under the impression that those orders would be in place and the prohibiting extracurricular activities and forcing us into virtual. So we began that in earnest. I think has been mentioned a number of times. I am grateful for our staff and our community to make quick changes, quick difficult changes. And as we know, this past Wednesday, the health board has rescinded those orders and changed them to advisories. Being that as we may, I presented the board with several scenarios based on where we were operationally and what we could do for just the remaining time at that point, 12 days in the semester. At this point, 10 days in the semester. Scenario one was begin hybrid Monday, December 7th. And I counted students would receive four days of on-site instruction in our module or in our hybrid mode. 2 days of structured virtual learning. Assignments would be made on those instructional days. I did not believe that that was a viable option at the time because of staffing and operation. Currently, we have 15 staff members, 8 of whom are positive. The rest are quarantined or isolated. It breaks down to 7 teachers, 2 counselors, 2 bus drivers, although we have an individual that serves both as a bus driver and a cook. So you could say 3 bus drivers, 2 paraprofessionals and 2 cooks. For a district our size, that is rather significant and does have a disruption on operations, a significant disruption on operations. I did not recommend scenario one for those reasons. Scenario two would begin hybrid learning on Thursday, December 10th. Students would receive 3 days of on-site instruction and 1 day of virtual learning. Assignments would still be made in between those instructional days. From a staffing standpoint, based on our current numbers, we would be much more in a position to begin hybrid learning, which would be next Thursday. But really trying to weigh the consistency and overall, to be honest with you, common sense of changing that on Thursday prior to knowing that we would only have 7 days and only 3 on-site days for virtual education. For hybrid education. Scenario 3 was we remain virtual for what now will be the last 10 days. Students in our virtual program, which we have made some adaptations from the 4th quarter, would receive 8 days of structural virtual learning. It would provide consistency for families. It certainly is within the health advisory of Madison County Public Health, which changed to it that from a mandate to an advisory. In looking at making at these scenarios and making a recommendation to the board, gathered a fair amount of input, and as Mr. Boyd had alluded to, certainly sought the opinion of the London Educational Association, which agreed for this plan. Those were the options for the short term, and my recommendation was that from the items that I mentioned, that we stay in a virtual module. Now, I also shared with the board a couple of recommendations to look at as we look towards the start of the second semester, and then also we look at extracurricular activities. Personally, as we looked at and as we talked about in early November with our cases going up, moving to hybrid, we knew from a district standpoint, operationally, we were going to have to do something because of our staffing numbers, and our staffing availability was dwindling. And so I updated this board, updated our families on multiple occasions that even if the health department did not order it, we probably would have had to step back to hybrid. If we began this week hybrid, my recommendation would have been to stay in hybrid to get to the end of the first semester. But from now, when we were in a virtual format, we would stay there from a consistency standpoint. Now, I'm recommending that because we are making decisions on operational data, the number of students and staff who are quarantined and isolated, and those numbers have dropped and will continue to drop because students are not in school, that we open the school year in a hybrid model after the first of the year. And we take 2 weeks to evaluate those numbers in particular and make a decision whether or not we can move to more on-campus instruction or whether or not we're seeing a spike in cases of positive quarantine and isolation, and we have to take a step back. From an extracurricular standpoint, I will note that our coaches, our athletic department did a marvelous job this past fall. All of our teams were able to compete really very safely and without a lot of interruption. I credit that to athletes, to parents, to our athletic department, Mr. Wolverton, and our coaches who looked at what was required from us from OHSAA, and the governor's office made those adaptations and certainly tried to put them into place in earnest so that to keep our students safe and to have a season. Being that as it may, I do think that we can provide sports in a much structured environment, quite frankly, than some of the aspects that we have at school every day. I'd like to bring sports back really beginning Monday from a practice standpoint and restart competitions for our students as well. I believe that the way that we have looked at our the guidance continues here into the winter season. I think our coaches and our athletic department is certainly has been very cognizant of those actions. And again, I have not witnessed in any of our sports team an outbreak of COVID-19 nor transmission on our sports team, and certainly am recommending that course of action. I think I've given you kind of an overview, Mr. Brown. I'm happy to answer questions from the board, or we can engage more discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Kramer. Just to
Basically, go ahead.
well, if you have a question, Mr. Cooper, please go ahead.
I'll wait. Go ahead.
What I was going to say was to recap, you're recommending to the board that we remain in virtual learning until the first of the year, that we proceed with reopening for our extracurricular and sports activities starting Monday, and that after the first year, we return to a hybrid model for the first 2 weeks of that period. And then depending upon the statistics that we're receiving and reviewing and the reality of the situation at that point, we would likely return to full in-person learning after that 2 weeks, but we'll have to make that decision at that time. Is that correct, Dr. Kramer?
That's correct. One thing that I didn't mention, of course, is that families will still have the option to opt into Raider Remote for the second semester. So the way that we looked at our remote program, and again, I think this goes within our third goal as a district to provide opportunities and broaden opportunities for families, is that we would have an option for families who aren't comfortable sending their children to school during this time. And quite frankly, we had this option before a pandemic. It has just expanded a number of times fold as we've looked at trying to really meet people in the middle as much as we possibly can. So I will note that Raider Remote options will still be available for families who are uncomfortable with sending their children to school during the second semester.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Cooper, you had a comment or question?
Yes, I do. As Miss Blinn was reading some of the letters, I remember Miss Hiles, and I noted, said that we just came off of a holiday, and that could have been probably why the numbers may have went up or are going up. We're going to get ready to come off of 2 holidays, Dr. Kramer. If we can't return to school, or we have the same number of people off, staff and employees off, bus drivers, etc., at the first of the year, do you have a plan?
Mr. Cooper, let me make sure I understand that you're saying if we have low teacher availability, and the teachers aren't available to staff in-person learning, do I have a plan?
Yes.
Yes, I do. If we don't have the availability of teachers to provide, we would have to be in remote education.
We would have to remain remote, right? Is that what you said?
Yes, sir. If the teachers are not able to be here, we would have to be remote.
And we approved several substitutes a few meetings ago. Are we utilizing those substitutes?
We are.
We have been.
Yes, every day.
And Mr. Boyd, is he still on here?
He is not.
Okay. Well, because I talked to a couple of teachers who said they were not talked to about returning to school. How is that done? Do you know? You probably don't know.
How does he pull his association?
Exactly.
Likely through email.
Okay. And everybody's supposed to be emailed.
I can't tell you that. I would imagine that Mr. Boyd polls his members. He's the president of the London Educational Association. So I imagine that would go to membership.
And since several of our teachers are also coaches, they're okay with going back, which I'm 100%, for athletics and education. So the coaches that are teachers, because Mr. Boyd kind of slanted it a little bit that the association was scared to go into the school, that it wasn't safe at this time. Are those coaches who we have employed as staff members comfortable with coaching?
Well, I won't speak for every coach individually, but certainly we have talked to our coaches that are anxious to restart their seasons. As I mentioned, we feel, and I am an example of a winter coach for the school district. We feel like we have protective actions that are happening right now. And looking at the numbers, which is the way that we have made decisions in the past, we've been able to present a safe athletic environment. You mentioned the word scared. I do think there are absolutely teachers that are concerned. I've talked to a number of folks individually. I will tell you that overwhelmingly teachers want kids to be here within school. But I also say that overwhelmingly in my discussions with teachers, consistency was also very important. Thinking about families, thinking about the switch that families were to make to go to virtual over the 3 weeks. They've had to, within a week that we were informed where we would have to move from hybrid to virtual, families have had to make plans for 3 weeks. And certainly if we change that here midstream, families would have to make alternative plans as well.
When's the first day on my calendar says January 5th, but we have a professional development day on the 4th. I know that, Daryl, we approved that in the calendar. Do you not feel safe to do the professional development day within the next 2 weeks while campus is technically open, and then start school hopefully on the 4th on Monday?
Well, the 4th does include some contractual language, including a professional development day and records day.
And records day.
Yes, and is a part of the district academic calendar that's approved.
Right,
So
I know. And that's why I told President Brown I was aware of that before. Okay. Well, so we're leaning with scenario 3. No education in the school, but athletics are allowed to return Monday.
That would be my recommendation. When we approve the restart plan, we approve the restart plan for obvious reasons so that if we needed to make changes, we could do that outside of board meetings. But the language included in there, as Mr. Brown had indicated, would be that it was a superintendent's decision with board input. And so, of course, besides the updates that we gave to the community every 2 to 3 weeks, clearly the board has received a dashboard with teacher availability, attendance rates, rates of positive quarantine and isolated students as well. So that'll continue. But undoubtedly, for a number of reasons, my recommendation is that we stay virtual for just simply the final 2 weeks, but we try to bring our students back as quickly as possible, beginning of the first of the second semester.
Okay. Do you correspond with the other county superintendents?
I do.
You know Mr. Mullet? West Jefferson?
I know Mr. Mullet.
Would you mind maybe in the near future, and I'll attend, just let me know, I'll go with you. Can we go over there and see what they're doing that we may not be doing or that we could improve on for sanitary reasons or staffing? I know their numbers are real low and I know they're a smaller school than us, but maybe we can take something from them and apply it so we can open up January 5th.
Mr. Cooper, I'm certainly up for that. I think
Okay.
in suggesting that, you're also suggesting that the district is not taking adequate steps in order to look at the safety of our students and staff. And I think what we need to understand is from the data that we've received, the 43, and I can't speak for all of the 43, but we monitored this rather quickly. I only know of one case where we may have had transmission here on campus. Now, I won't speak for all of the cases. We certainly hear an account of how someone may have been positive, but overwhelmingly, we have been affected by community spread. And I'm open to, always open to going over and sitting down and having a conversation. That won't change the community spread here and the impact that it has on our district.
Well, I think you misunderstood me because I think you and I have talked on the phone and I applauded Mr. Helmkamp and the staff. And I think you remember that because on election day, I said he was taking care of the gymnasium and I saw that. I know other people saw that. So I think you just took that wrong. I'm sorry.
So, yeah, no problem. I'm happy to do that.
That's all I have there, Mr. President. So thank you, Dr. Kramer, for your input and thank you for the scenarios. I like how you outlined them. You gave us 3 options. You gave yourself, 3 options, but they were well said. So thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Do we have any other discussion?
Now, I'll just interject real quick. Having 3 kids like everyone else, out there that wants their kids to be in school. Obviously, I would want my 3 kids to be in school. They do better in school. They do better in extracurricular activities. They do better in sports. All the things that have been mentioned by all the public participation in here. Like most businesses, you can't turn on a dime. And if the orders passed by Cook weren't done 2 weeks ago, we won't be here talking today about whether we stay virtual versus hybrid. And when you got 2,000 students plus teachers and administrators, and you're trying to pivot in a couple of days to go from in-person to totally remote to hybrid, back to remote, back and forth, it doesn't work. It doesn't work in the school. It doesn't work in business. So we're in an unfortunate position where, I think the recommendation set forth makes sense for the rest of this semester. The other thing that's always left out of the equation is when we talk about our students, and everyone wants what's best for the students. And, we believe that. That's why we're involved. The issue with bringing students back on the hybrid method or even 5-day in school, like you hear from other people where their cousins go to different districts and whatnot. The part that's left out of that is everything that goes into running a school. And it's not just your kids getting on the bus and showing up at the classroom and, taking their class and turning in their homework. You got bus drivers that got to get them there. You got cooks that got to cook the food, got to be there. If they're out, you got to get substitutes. And I think these are a lot of the logistics that are being left out of the conversations on both sides of the argument. whether you want kids back tomorrow in school or whether you want to continue with the remote. I feel the school does a very, very good job trying to keep things sanitized and clean and able to move forward with education. So I think if we continue with Dr. Kramer's recommendation, I think that's great. I think there are some things that we have to address between now and January. In particular, listening to the families that do have families or students that are health compromised, but are also in different programs, working through the logistics and the legalities of allowing people who may be in an honors program or, and I may misspeak here, but a College Credit Plus program or something of that nature, or even a special needs where Raider Remote doesn't work for them, or they can't take the class via Raider Remote. So I think we need to have some conversations with administrators, with the LEA on how we may provide for those kids. And I do want to touch on the one thing that we passed, back before school even started and Dr. Kramer mentioned, and that is, we do have the option if kids feel unsafe or parents feel their kids are unsafe to do Raider Remote, in the new semester. And there were some guidelines with that. Once you elected it, you had to stay in it all semester. I think this first semester has given us the opportunity to figure out some of the pros and cons of that approach. And maybe while we're still here in early December, if we continue with the remote learning, that we look at some of those cons to help improve that situation, to give our families the opportunity to continue remote if they don't feel it's safe to go back into the classroom. I, for one, am very happy with my kids going back in the classroom. My kids will look forward to it. We're blessed that we don't have health issues, but that's not every one of our families and every one of our students. So I think we have to continue to monitor all the things that Dr. Kramer laid out and take those into consideration. And obviously, I'll say the same thing everyone always says. The sooner we can get everyone back in class, the better, but let's just be realistic and say that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen in 4 weeks. It's not going to happen in 6 weeks. We're living this COVID pandemic, for lack of a better way of putting it, for a while. So we have to make sure we give our families options, and we have to take into account not just the students, but everyone else. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Do you have any other comments?
I concur with Mr. Holman. One thing I appreciate that we're providing alternatives and options for our students and their families. The Raider Remote option and whether families choose to send their students to our facilities. One thing I'd like for us to continue to explore is that in those Raider Remote students, those families that aren't comfortable sending their students to our buildings, that we explore options for continuance of some type of honors program or some type of enriched program for those students, so that they don't have to choose between an honors program and potentially, being required to attend in person. And maybe we can't do that, but I'd like for us to see what we can do there and see if, especially if this becomes a longer term situation.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Mr. Stahl, did you have any comments?
No, I just like to see the kids get back into school sooner the better, but it all depends on how this whole COVID thing is going to go. But it's up to all five of us to make this decision, and that's what's best interest of the kids. I know me personally, with my kids, they're better off into school, getting a better education than doing it online. we got to do what's the best interest of the kids.
All right. Okay, thank you, Mr. Stahl. I'd like to thank you, Dr. Kramer, for outlining all of these scenarios. I'd like to thank everyone for their inputs this morning for how to proceed. Currently, under the board decisions that we've previously passed, there's no requirement for a vote on this issue, given that you've made a recommendation to the board with board input. Cooper, you've called the meeting. Do you have a motion to make at this time?
No, I would like to thank everyone for getting together this morning before breakfast. I know the early mornings can be rough, but I do appreciate this was much better input feedback. And I think, and despite everybody's opinions and differences, I think the community needed to hear this, and the thoughts and the letters, public participation. I think all in all, it was good. So thanks guys for coming together again. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Before we end, I'll again thank everyone and echo the words that we've heard here this morning. This isn't easy. We as a board have to make some tough decisions sometimes, and this is one of those. And given all the factors, I firmly believe it to be the right decision for our district and our community. I believe our district has done a very good job so far, and I know that we'll continue to make every effort to do so now and in the future to protect LCS. That's what we do. And one thing I'll also mention, and just ask everyone to remember, that this will end. We will get through this. We will continue to take hard work and dedication, but this is something our community is used to. That is hard work and dedication. We come together in times of need, and this is one of those. There's light at the end of the tunnel for us now. We need to continue to work together and support one another in our community. This chapter will close and another will begin, and we need to consider how we treat and respond to one another through these very difficult times. I'd recommend that we need to strive and give and show grace to one another. It's tempting to get easily frustrated and have less patience. It's easy to seek out someone to blame. These are times never seen by most, and I believe we are all struggling and doing the best we can. Please remember, words do matter, and caring about one another and getting through this together is important. Again, this will end, and I look forward to seeing each of you in person and being able to see your faces at school events, musicals, sporting events, and elsewhere in our community. Until then, I'll reemphasize what I have at every meeting that we've had since this began. I ask everyone on the LCS team, as well as the community, continue to lead by example. Wear your mask, follow the established protocols so we can protect our community, we can get our kids back in school full time, and we can keep them there. That's what we all want to do. So again, I'd like to thank you all for being here. I'll thank the members of the community for reaching out to us. I'll also state that many of us received other emails from parents and members of the community that they didn't want read online, but they took the time out of their day to provide us with comments and inputs. And that's it's very important that we be made aware of those thoughts as we go through this process. And so I'll go ahead and wrap this up and ask, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Mr. Holman, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Cooper, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, the ayes have it. All right, again, thank you all. Be safe.
Everybody.
Thank you.